I don't believe in coincidences. I never have. But that Friday in July, when I put the bags in the trunk and my 8-year-old daughter ran up to me with a smile that seemed to light up the entire sidewalk, I thought maybe, just maybe, the universe occasionally falls into place. My name is Daniel Rios. I'm 38 years old, a civil engineer, and I spend most of my days fixing problems other people don't want to look at. Fractured structures, unstable ground, things that seem solid but aren't. My wife, Claudia, had planned that trip for weeks. A cabin by a lake, for hours from Belo Horizonte, surrounded by mountains and silence. 3 days without internet. No meetings. Just the 4 of us. Me, her, our daughter Isabella, and my older son Lucas, who was 14 and already carried that tired-of-the-world teenage expression. We left right after lunch. The car smelled like sunscreen and that Apple shampoo Isabella uses. Claudia's playlist was playing. A mix of old Brazilian music she calls road trip songs. Everything was exactly as it should be. I remember thinking, this is going to be great. I remember smiling at the rearview mirror and seeing my daughter drawing in her notebook, completely absorbed in her own world. I remember the low sun through the window, the orange light over the mountains. And I also remember missing the highway exit. It was just a GPS mistake. One missed turn. It happens to anyone. But when I turned onto that dirt road, something inside me, very quiet, very deep, said, "Don't go this way." The GPS went silent for almost 2 minutes. That kind of digital silence that isn't normal, no recalculating, no make a U-turn when possible. Nothing. The screen just stopped updating. Claudia said it was probably the phone signal. She was probably right. But the dirt road was wide enough for the car, and Google Maps had said there was a shortcut that would cut 40 minutes off the trip. So I kept going. The forest closed in on both sides faster than I expected. Tall trees, dark trunks, dense foliage filtering the light in a strange way. Not dark, but too golden, as if the sun were at an angle that didn't make sense for that time of day. Lucas took off his headphones for the first time in 3 hours. That caught my attention. Teenagers don't take off their headphones for anything. "Dad," he said, "there's a sign back there." I had already passed it. An old wooden sign, the letters almost erased by time and rain. I reversed slowly. Lucas read it out loud. "Coville Road. Private property. Turn back." Claudia laughed. "What a dramatic name." Isabella stopped drawing. I looked at the road ahead. It stretched on, straight and clear, as if it were frequently used. No weeds growing in the middle. Fresh tire marks in the mud. "It's probably just the name of a farm," I said, and I kept going. I don't know why I kept going. 5 minutes later, the car began to lose power. Slowly, subtly, as if the forest were, little by little, absorbing the engine. The car stopped completely at 5:43 p.m. I know the time because I looked at the dashboard clock at the exact moment the engine died, and for some reason that detail stuck in my memory as if it mattered. There was no obvious mechanical reason. The tank was full. The engine temperature was normal. No warning lights came on. The car simply stopped wanting to move. I spent 10 minutes trying to restart it. Claudia was on her phone looking for signal. Nothing. Lucas got out to check underneath the car. Isabella didn't say anything, but I noticed she had closed her drawing notebook and was staring out the window with a kind of focus that wasn't normal for an 8-year-old looking at a forest. "Isabella, you okay?" She took a moment to answer. "There's a house, Dad." I looked where she pointed. At the end of the road, between the trees, there was indeed a structure. An old colonial house, with clay roof tiles and whitewashed walls that seemed almost luminous in the dim forest light. A yellow light glowed in an upstairs window. Someone was there. We walked toward it. There wasn't much choice. The light was fading, our phones had no signal, and the road behind us somehow felt longer than it should. The house had an untidy but not abandoned garden. Flowers planted in pots on the porch. A rocking chair. A broom leaning against the wall as if someone had left it there 5 minutes ago. I knocked on the door 3 times. Silence. I knocked again, and the door opened on its own. There was no wind. No one on the other side. The door simply opened, slowly and silently, as if the house had been waiting for us. Inside, the house smelled of old wood and dry herbs. Bundles of plants hung from the kitchen ceiling, rosemary, lavender, others I didn't recognize. A large table with 4 chairs. A wood-burning stove that was still warm. Someone had been there. Recently. Claudia found a note on the table, pinned under a wax candle. The handwriting was small and tight, but readable. If you need to, stay. Be careful with the forest after 6. Do not light candles in the south-facing window. She turned it over. Nothing on the back. Who leaves a note like this? Lucas asked. Someone who likes drama, Claudia said, but her voice was lower than usual. I was about to say we needed to find another way out. Call for help, walk back, whatever it took, when Isabella tugged at my sleeve. Dad, come see what I drew. She handed me her notebook. The last page. I expected horses or clouds, or those little houses with smoke coming out of the chimney that she's been drawing since she was 3. It was none of that. It was the road. Our dirt road, seen from above, as if she had looked down from the top of a tree. The car stopped. 4 of us walking toward the house, and around us, between the trees, other figures. Many, tall, thin, faceless. When did you draw this, Isabella? In the car, she said, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. They were following us. I looked out the window at the forest. The forest was dark. It was 6:01 p.m., and then, outside very close to the wall, something made a sound that wasn't wind. Wasn't an animal. It was, as impossible as it sounds, breathing. Lucas moved first. He grabbed his jacket, went to the door, and before any of us could say anything, opened it and looked outside. There's a man out there, he said. I went to him. About 30 meters away stood a figure holding a kerosene lantern. An old man with white hair, wearing simple rural work clothes. He saw us and stopped. He lifted the lantern in our direction, as if trying to see better. I waved. He didn't wave back. After a long moment, he walked toward us with slow but steady steps. As he got closer, I saw his face, weathered by the sun, full of deep lines. And his eyes had that undefined color of someone who has lived too long in places with little light. You shouldn't be here, he said. Not angrily, just as a fact. Our car stopped, I explained. We're trying to get a signal, but there's none. There won't be any signal here. He glanced at the forest. You came through Coville Road. The sign said to turn back. But the road was open, so... I know what the road was. He interrupted gently. It opens when it wants visitors. Claudia and I exchanged a quick look. I'll see what I can do with your car in the morning, he said. For now, stay inside. Your daughter? He looked at Isabella, who was holding my hand, and for a moment something crossed his face that I couldn't identify. Not fear, not pity, almost recognition. The girl already knows what she needs to know. He turned to leave. Wait, I said. Who are they? The figures in the forest? He stopped, but didn't turn around. They're not figures, he said. They're echoes. And he walked off into the darkness, the lantern swaying slowly, until the light disappeared among the trees. I closed the door. We locked everything. And then I noticed on the small table by the entrance, something that hadn't been there before. A tiny metal object, an oval medallion, darkened with age, engraved with a symbol I didn't recognize. Still warm, as if someone had been holding it seconds earlier. The 4 of us slept downstairs, together in the living room. I wouldn't call it sleeping. It was more like waiting with our eyes closed. Claudia dozed off. Lucas too, eventually. Isabella slept with her head on my lap. I stayed awake. The medallion stayed in my hand all night. It was too heavy for its size. The engraved symbol seemed to shift slightly depending on the angle. Sometimes it looked like a tree, sometimes an eye, sometimes something I couldn't name. I knew it was just the dim light playing tricks on me. I knew that. At 2 in the morning, I heard footsteps upstairs. Regular. Slow. Back and forth across the same room. I got up quietly, took my phone flashlight, climbed the stairs trying not to make noise, which is impossible in an old wooden house, but I tried anyway. The upstairs hallway had 3 doors. 2 open. 1 closed, the one at the end. The footsteps were coming from there. I approached, put my hand on the doorknob. The wood was cold, colder than the rest of the house. And then the footsteps stopped. Completely, as if something on the other side knew I was there. Absolute silence. Then a voice. Low, direct, from inside the room. "Why are you here?" I let go of the knob, took a step back. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my neck, my wrists, my throat. The voice wasn't scary in itself. It was almost curious, almost human, almost. I went downstairs without turning my back on the hallway. When I got down, Isabella was sitting up, awake, looking at me with very calm eyes. "She just wants to know," my daughter said. "Like me when I want to understand something." In the morning, the forest was covered in fog. A thick, low fog that seeped through the window gaps like smoke and smelled like wet earth and something vegetal I couldn't identify. The old man came back at dawn as promised. Said his name was Seu Artur. No last name. He spent 40 minutes with the car. Didn't open the hood. Didn't touch any parts. Just stood beside the vehicle with his hands in his pockets for about 30 minutes, looking at it. Then he got in, turned the ignition, and the engine started as if it had never stopped. "What did you do?" I asked. "I talked," he replied. I didn't ask for an explanation. As we packed our things to leave, I asked him about the medallion. He looked at it in my hand with an expression that took a little too long to become naturally calm. "That wasn't in the house when I first got here," he said. "They leave it sometimes, for those they think need it." "Who are they?" I asked again. He took a deep breath, looked at the fog. "I don't know the right name for what they are. I know they've been in this forest far longer than people have. I know they don't usually harm anyone, but they get curious about certain families." "Certain families?" "Families that have someone like your daughter." He looked at Isabella, who was outside playing with a piece of quartz she had found in the garden, completely unaware of the conversation. Children who see what shouldn't be seen. Before I could respond, a gust of wind moved through the fog, and in it, clear and distinct, I heard something that chilled me without me fully understanding why. "Daniel." My name. My full name, pronounced exactly the way my mother used to say it when I was a child.
Seu Arthur showed no surprise.
"They learn fast," he said simply. I needed to leave. Needed to get my family into that car and go. But when I went to get Isabella, she was standing in the middle of the garden, staring into the fog. And in the fog there was a shape. Tall, thin, vague, looking back at her. Isabella. She didn't turn. Kept staring at the fog, at that shape that both existed and didn't. "Isabella, let's go. She wants to show me something," my daughter said. My instinct, animal primitive, told me to grab her and run. But I forced myself to stay still, to breathe, to think.
Seu Arthur soto beside-me.
"If you call her with fear, she'll feel the fear too," he said quietly. "Use the voice you use when you want her to trust you." I looked at him, looked at my daughter, at the fog, and then Isabella took a step toward the shape. "Wait." I moved, didn't run, walked, stood beside her, took her hand. "Show me together." She looked at me, assessing me for a second the way only children can, then smiled. "Okay." The fog thickened for a moment. The shape became clearer, not enough to have face or details, but enough to convey something I still struggle to put into words. It wasn't threatening. It was more like recognition, like when you look at a very old photograph and suddenly realize the person in it is looking directly at you. Isabella squeezed my hand, and then the fog receded. The shape vanished. The garden went quiet. Claudia appeared at the door. "Is everything okay?" "Yes," I said, and it was true in a way I'm still trying to understand. The medallion in my hand was warm now. Warm as if it had just come out of a fire. I could have left it there, set it down on the table and gone. That would have been the right thing to do. But when I opened my hand to drop it, I realized I couldn't. Not because I was forced to, because I didn't want to. We left at 9 in the morning. Artur stood on the porch watching as we drove away. He didn't wave, just watched, with that expression that mixed weariness with something that looked, strangely, like hope. The road was different in daylight. Narrower, darker. The trees seemed to have leaned in overnight, as if they wanted to make the path harder to find. No one spoke for 20 minutes. Lucas had his headphones on, but I could see in the mirror he wasn't listening to anything. The screen was on, unlocked, and he was just staring out the window. Claudia had her hand on my arm. Not tight, not nervous, just present, as if confirming something real was still there. Isabella fell asleep soon after we left. Her notebook rested closed on her lap. When we reached the sign, Coville Road, turn back. I stopped the car for a moment, looked back. The dirt road disappeared into the trees in a gentle curve, calm, almost inviting. "Dad," Lucas said from the back seat. "You can go." I turned back to the highway. The GPS started working immediately, as if it had never failed. We reached the cabin at 10:30. The lake was beautiful. The silence was the good kind, full of birds, wind, and water. Isabella woke up when I stopped the car and ran to the edge of the lake before any of us could say a word. Normal. Completely normal. I stayed in the car a few minutes longer, holding the medallion, thinking about what Artur had said. Certain families. Thinking that if he was right about Isabella, there was a question I hadn't asked. One that, as it formed in my mind right there in the car, made me freeze. Why had I heard my name in the fog too? And then I remembered. When I was a child, my mother used to say I had nightmares I couldn't remember, that I sometimes woke up drawing in the dark, that she once found me in the yard in the middle of the night, awake, staring at the street as if I were waiting for someone. I had never given it much thought. We spent the 3 days at the lake as planned. Swimming, cooking, playing cards, going to bed early. Exactly what we wanted. No one talked about Coville Road. Not because we agreed not to, but because the words simply didn't come when we tried. On the last night, Isabella asked for her notebook back. I hadn't realized I still had it. It was under my pillow. I didn't open it while she slept. But in the morning, before we left, she showed me what she had drawn on the last page. It was the cabin, the lake, the 4 of us by the water, and around us, far in the distance, among the trees, the same tall, thin figures she had drawn before. This time they weren't following us. They were standing still, watching, just watching. "Did they come too?" I asked. Isabella looked at me as if I had asked an obvious question. "They're always there, Dad. We're just the ones who don't see." We went home that day. The trip was quiet. A normal week followed. Work, school, family dinners. Everything continued. The medallion sits on my desk. I haven't tried to find out where it came from. I haven't researched the symbol. I haven't called any specialist. Because sometimes, late at night, when the house is quiet and I'm alone in my office, it gets warm. For no apparent reason. Just warm. And I find myself wondering if I'm being watched. And also wondering if that bothers me as much as it should.